Her gamertag was Untamed Daisy, but everyone called her Untamed. She wore a daisy pendant necklace because she believed its qualities, innocence, purity, and newness, fit her perfectly. She wasn't the best video gamer, but she was one of a kind. Asterd, That Guy 3, Chocolate Ash, and Poppin' Cherries were all her best friends, and yes, she knew their real names, but she rarely used them. Gamertags had their own type of anonymity and class. Her love seat was a dark navy blue seated directly in between a round table, stacked high with pizza boxes, and a small nightstand cluttered with books and soda cans. Untamed loves playing video games online with her best friends. She knows all of them personally, and yes, their friendship is online and long distance, but every time she logs on it's like she's right next to them playing, looting, leveling up and making fun of each other's character. She always has a great time and deeply loves their friend group, but since she has to begin supporting herself, she has to spend less and less time on games. She informs her friends and they are all understanding. It had been 2 weeks since she logged on, and when she did, all of her friends were playing a psychological horror game. She agreed to play only because it was the main way to reach and talk to her friends. Unfortunately, the game began to get darker and darker the more she played, and eventually began to trigger her nightmares and her PTSD. Realizing how triggering and dangerous this is, Untamed stops playing and begins to start thinking about her mental and spiritual health. Untamed stops playing video games and tells her friends that she will be very busy from now on. She switched her daisy pendant out with an African violet flower pendant. It fit perfectly because just like the flower, she was pursuing spiritual wisdom and humility. It was so difficult to stop playing video games, and sometimes her hand would twitch and crave the feel of the controller like an unquenched thirst. Beginning her search into becoming a better and strong person, Untamed focuses on mindfulness, meditation, and prayer. She buys all the things all meditation people around her have, and begins to search for more meaning in her life. She spends over $300 on yoga mats, a Zen garden, aromatherapy waterfalls and crystals, candles, and of course the tiny Buddha with a namaste blanket. However, secretly she wishes to be back in her room, playing video games, and hanging out with her friends. The meditation and prayer helped her out more than she thought, but she had to admit the Buddha and extra blankets and the expensive yoga mat were all unnecessary. After meditation and prayer and drinking wellness smoothies, Untamed begins to search for happiness and a bit of meaning in the business world. While working as the mail server at a large Fortune 500 company, Untamed meets James. They hang out a lot. Pretty soon they can't go a day without speaking and seeing each other. James happens to be very successful. He begins to take her to elegant hotels, gives her money, buys her jewelry, fancy dresses, and they go out to dinners. She mentally decides the next pendant will be an orchid showing her elegance and luxurious lifestyle. While out one day, she asks if they could stop inside of a jewelry store. She switches out her African violet pendant into an orchid pendant necklace. Untamed enjoys this new lavish lifestyle, but she has to follow James' set of rules for going to these places with him. She doesn't have any friends other than the ones that he occasionally hangs out with at the club, but even then they are his buddies' girlfriends and wives. She lies to them a lot about who she is and who she was for fear of ridicule and spoiling James' reputation. She wants to enjoy this fabulous adventurous life, but she feels like a trout who was dipped into a can of glittery rainbow paint surrounded by natural-born rainbow fish. Untamed continues to date him, and it wasn't until their last night in Paris, France, that she finally told him what was on her mind and how she has been feeling. He said he understood, and they completed their evening with as much passion as the first night. She walked to the bathroom after a fabulous night at a friend's chateau. She looked at herself in the mirror, but she could barely recognize herself anymore. Is it good that I'm not the same person I used to be, she asked herself. Isn't this type of easy, luxurious lifestyle what most people want and strive for their whole life? That night, in the shower, she cried. She ended up leaving James, but she kept a savings account while they were dating to store all the money he would give her. She ventured to Japan, and while walking through the breathtaking Nikko National Park, she watched a flower bloom without anyone's permission and remembered when she used to be untamed. She was already in Japan, and now, despite not having to work for it, she is a millionaire, and something that has constantly been on her mind throughout the years is gaming with her best friends. She missed her dark room of comfort, her pizza box shelf, and most of all her group of friends. They saw her and heard her, and liked her exactly as she was. She was sad that she lost contact with them, and then an idea sparked inside her head like a matchstick being enlightened. She could build an application to reconnect with all of her friends. The goal is an app where you can still keep contact with your video game friends online without being online and playing games. She began to develop this app with a few developers while she stayed in Japan. She named it Untamed and sent it directly to her gaming friend group. They loved it and sent it to everyone they knew. In 1 hour, her app went viral all over the world, and it is now known as Untamed, the chat app for gamers with a maroon and white carnation emblem. Later that night, as she walked the sensual romantic streets of France, she stopped inside a jewelry store and bought herself a maroon and white carnation pendant necklace. She felt she needed something that described her in this new stage in her life. So, like the carnation, she is full of love, admiration, and good fortune. She found love for herself and adoration for gaming and her friends. She sees good fortune coming her way, and she's definitely happier being an untamed carnation. Victoria.